everybody. Welcome to episode 25 of Tech Safe here in Worcester, Massachusetts, where they've so graciously given us this time to create these episodes for you to better understand wireless risks and safer technology solutions. So thank you to our hosts here at WCCA TV in Worcester. And today we are delighted to have two guests with us from Pittsfield, Massachusetts. Courtney Gilardi and her daughter, Amelia. Welcome, Amelia and Courtney, and thank you for joining us today.
Cece, thank you so much for having us.
You are so welcome. So, for those who don't know what your experiences have been in Pittsfield, can you tell us how you got involved in the wireless radiation issue?
Well, a tower was put up at the top of the street in our neighborhood, and when it started transmitting, myself, my mom, my sister, my entire family, and 17 plus of our neighbors were made sick by the tower. We experienced headaches, dizziness, nausea, heart palpitations, skin rashes, vomiting. The list just kind of goes on. And so that's kind of how we got involved, because we were made so sick that we physically could not live in our home anymore.
Oh, good. And how long ago was that?
This was nearly 4 years ago now.
So we're talking the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, when everybody was in lockdown 24/7 in their homes. Okay, and so from there, what happened with your municipal leaders and your Board of Health?
Our city councilors encouraged us to reach out to our health department, and they said, we'll send somebody right out. And we waited, and they didn't come. And so we called again, and they said, we'll send somebody out. And so we called again, and we'll send somebody out, and they didn't. And eventually, the city council had to petition our Board of Health to do an investigation into the symptoms around the 877 South Street Verizon cell tower and come up with solutions for those who had been impacted in the neighborhood. So it started a kind of quest for information around the wireless safety issue, the wireless harms issue. And our health department and Board of Health started interviewing doctors and subject matter experts and really learning about the issue. In the investigation, they had heard from both Verizon and Verizon's experts, and they had also heard from the physicists and the engineers and the doctors and the radiologists and the people who knew about the wireless harms issue. And they made a ruling that our houses were uninhabitable due to the levels of RF radiation and issued a cease and desist for Verizon to show cause and come to the table and have conversations about solutions. Unfortunately, Verizon turned around and sued in federal court in exchange for dropping the cease and desist. Verizon would drop the litigation. We turned around and had attorneys intervene when no alternative solution had been found. We were promised non-litigious solutions. And we get to have our day in court very shortly.
Oh, I can't believe how much you guys have been going through. You know, Amelia, we've watched you grow up. I think you were 11 years old when you first started getting hives and vomiting and nausea from that cell tower. So it's just incredible that this has taken 4 years. But we know that these court cases build off one another. Here in Massachusetts at the Fay School, for the first time in the United States, the courts did recognize that, yes, indeed, there are biological effects at the non-thermal level. So for your court case to be taking it to the next step, where your consultations with the Massachusetts Association of Health Boards have revealed that they believe, at the attorney level, that although that Telecom Act of 1996 put certain restrictions on the siting of cell towers, once something comes into the community that is harming the citizens or the environment or is causing a nuisance, the jurisdiction then belongs to the Board of Health. So we're very hopeful that when you have your day in court, hopefully later this month, that the restrictions put on the Board of Health by Verizon and the court will be lifted so that your Board of Health can do their job as they wish to and help get you guys back in your homes over there on Alma Street. So we are all rooting for you. And now I understand, Amelia, that you are working on a civics project in high school. Can you tell us what that is?
Yeah, so I am in 10th grade currently. I'm 16, so has been quite a few years. But for our 10th grade, it's mandatory by the state that we have to do a civics project where we go out and we try to make change on a school, statewide or citywide level. And for my project, I decided I was going to submit a proclamation to Mayor Marchetti, our mayor of Pittsfield, to recognize June 16th as Global EHS Day. I've submitted this proclamation in the form of a petition 2 years prior, and we've got it passed both years in 2022 and 2023
By our city council.
And so this year I'd like to have it read as a proclamation by the mayor, and I've been in contact with him and his assistants, and hopefully it will be read this council meeting on June 11th.
Wow, that's fantastic. So for those who don't know the acronyms in this world, tell us what EHS is and what World EHS Day is.
EHS is electromagnetic hypersensitivity.
Okay.
It's quite a mouthful. And it's also known as wireless illness, which is what my mother and myself have. And it's a disability where you are sensitive to electromagnetic sensitivities and frequencies from wireless. Can you explain that any better than I can?
No,
I think you did a great job.
All right, lovely.
that was great.
And World EHS Day, or Global EHS Day, is a day to recognize this invisible illness and try to bring awareness to the topic, because the science exists, the facts exist that this is a real disease. It has been proclaimed a real disease and disability. And there are accommodations for it in other places, and we are trying to get those same accommodations in Pittsfield and surrounding areas.
Oh, that's such fantastic and important work. And when you talk about accommodations, there's an organization affiliated with the Americans with Disabilities Act here in the United States called the Jobs Area Network, or JAN. And I know that they have recommendations for how to offer accommodations in the workforce for people who have become electromagnetically sensitive. I know that Dr. Gallegos was working on this with the organizers of the Electromagnetic Fields Medical Conference before he passed away recently. So we're so very grateful for his work at the disability level, at the federal level, and we hope that his successors will continue with that. I want to give recognition to Elizabeth Kelly, who was the director of the Electromagnetic Fields Medical Conference, to Dr. Magda Havas up in Canada, who was the co-chair of that conference, and to Sheena Symington, who runs a support group called the Electrosensitive Society for North America, as well as Susie Malloy, who was instrumental in doing all this work over many, many years to get our federal level recognizing that we cannot continue to pollute our world with electromagnetic radiation and expect that people are going to be fine. And as we know, the numbers are growing faster and faster by the day of children and of adults who are getting electromagnetically sensitive. And I know that one of your neighbors was a longtime gardener, and he began to see the impacts of this cell tower in the neighborhood in other ways than just the people. Do one of you want to comment on what happened in his garden?
One of the things that we loved about our neighborhood is the wildlife. The girls growing up, they got to see turkey and deer and bear and fox and amazing red-tailed hawks and eagles. And you could just hear the spring keepers. That would herald the beginning of spring. They have wetlands behind the house, and it was like a symphony. We would be woken up in the morning with the turkeys jumping out of the trees, which was not a symphony. It was a lot of noise, but it was so much fun to see them. And when the tower started transmitting, one of my neighbors noticed that the pollinators started to disappear, and he needed to hand pollinate his garden. And he noticed that the wildlife started to disappear, and that there were some moles and voles and things that were underground that were now proliferating because the red-tailed hawk and the birds of prey that were feeding on them had gone elsewhere. And we have a retired nurse. It was the school nurse for all of the children in the neighborhood, so she knows the families quite well. She lives at the bottom of the neighborhood, and she reports at city council very regularly that when she walks, she hears the birds down, they're singing, they're chirping, they're making a lot of noise. As she walks up the hill towards the tower, it becomes silent. And that, to me, is absolutely heartbreaking. We've also had, in the houses closest to the tower, we've had pets die, which young, healthy pets who have died. And yet there was a cat who lived in the basement who didn't die. Yet the ones that were, again, close and exposed to the cell tower, they're the ones who are being impacted. We noticed that with our pet who was vomiting at home. We would take, as you know the story, we moved into a deferred maintenance, a home that had not been lived in for many years, 7 broken windows, no heating, water, bathroom facilities. So we slept on mattresses on the floor in a rat and mouse infested home until it was renovated. But we slept here, and we actually slept without symptoms. And it's so hard because we have a brand new, beautiful home on Alma Street that we're fighting to get back into, our family home forever, that we thought that the girls were literally born into. But they didn't have symptoms here. We were farther enough away from the cell tower that we were able to maintain a low, clean, green, radio frequency radiation free environment, and everybody got better. But when we would need to shower or eat or do things like school from home, we had to go back to the house, and the kids would get sick and the dog would get sick, and we would come back here and we'd be better. And we testified that we felt like human subject experiments. You know, you would go close, and it was a place that was familiar and comfortable at a time of a global pandemic where everything was up in the air. I wanted that security, and we were being told to stay safe at home, most unsafe place we could be. And we spent a lot of time in our public parks and in our like wildlife reserves. We would just go walking and picnicking. And then when the winter came, and it was a pretty brutal winter, that first winter, and we had to spend more time at home, we were so sick. And people were literally sleeping in their cars just to give themselves some relief from the headaches and the dizziness and the palpitations and the ringing in the ears that they were having. They were spending down their retirement money, and it was just absolutely awful. So not just the people have been impacted, but the pets have been impacted, and the wildlife has as well.
Oh, goodness. So, Courtney, I fell down the rabbit hole with this issue back in 2013. In 2014, I worked with Senate President Karen Spilka here in Massachusetts to draft with her attorney, Aaron Carty, a bill that would bring the right minds together at the state level to investigate wireless radiation and biological effects. And while we've had our bill here for 10 years now, It has come out of committee favorably, out of several different committees over the years, but we have yet to ever enact something meaningful. We did get the first law passed in the United States up in New Hampshire, and even during the pandemic, they committed to their one-year deadline to investigate this. And as you say in the Pittsfield emergency order to cease and desist, they document, just like Pittsfield, the New Hampshire legislature documents the conflicts of interest with the Food and Drug Administration, with the FCC, or the Federal Communications Commission, and with the wireless industry. And then they make 15 recommendations on how to start transitioning away from all Wi-Fi all the time to safe, responsibly deployed technology, which would be fiber optics or high-speed copper or cable right to the premises. And from inside the premises, or the home or the office or the school, all you have to do is plug back in with Ethernet cables, and you can buy little adapters to go into each one of the devices. And then, of course, you would need to measure, go in and turn off all the antennas in whatever's transmitting, and then measure and use a radio frequency radiation detection meter. This one happens to be the one that was recommended at the EMF, or Electromagnetic Fields Medical Conference. And it's critical to take measurements because the industry is forecasting that with 5G and the Internet of Things, we will have 200 devices in all of our homes that are connected wirelessly to the Internet. And that means a minimum of 200 separate antennas. Our cell phones, for example, have many different antennas: a cellular, a data, a Bluetooth, a Wi-Fi, a locator, a hotspot. And for anybody who didn't know any better and bought into the notion that 5G was going to be something great, those phones have an additional array of antennas, and each one constantly pulses microwave radiation to make or maintain that handshake with the nearest cell tower or router. And I understand that the Verizon cell tower that went up on top of your neighborhood, you guys all got so sick just from 6 macro antennas, and that structure is licensed for 48. Is that right? Now, have any of the other vendors put their antennas up?
No. Okay. I mean, and I would be afraid of, they built, the whole thing was just wrong in so many ways. And I just cannot even imagine living next to a fully loaded macro tower, and is what we are with, with what you said. And it's so interesting. I've asked the question, if the tower is upgraded, will we know? Will we have a say in the process? When the scientific data and the studies show, and the epidemiological studies around cell tower base stations show harm within 1,640 feet. Mm-hmm. Where is the consent of the people who are being radiated 24/7? Where is the consent of those people within 1,640 feet? We should have a say in what we are being exposed to, and we should know the risk, mm-hmm. and be able to, the same way when we go to the store, we choose what food we want to eat based on, our own ideas of, I need to eat organic or dairy-free or gluten-free or sugar-free or, whatever is best for your body. This is like secondhand smoke. Mm-hmm. We are exposed, and we need to have protections. And we showed the Ethernet cable and the cord, and we equate it to driving a car. We all drive cars. Fatalities happen all the time, but we wear our seatbelts. Mm-hmm. And we love our technology. We use our technology. We just do it safer.
Right. And so that New Hampshire Commission report is available at our website, which is Massachusetts for Safe Technology. And if you go to our state efforts page, you will find a lot of really good information. You'll find the bills that we have here in Massachusetts. Right now we have a commission bill that would do what New Hampshire has already done, bring the right minds to the table at the state level, form a commission, and decide how we're going to address this. And then we also have another bill that is still active right now, which is Senate Bill 2152, and that will give everybody the right to opt out of another toxic form of radio frequency microwave radiation that is about to be deployed on all of our homes by Eversource, National Grid, and others for the Smart Grid program, and that's for all of our utility meters, so it can extend out to electric, solar, water, gas. Up in New Hampshire, a colleague said her propane tank started in with a little wireless transmitter on it too. That company was really nice. When she said, I can't have that on my property, they just came and disabled it. So as a very first step, everybody, as you say, should have a right to know and the right to give informed consent or withhold that consent and choose to opt out of any of that technology. So that's the very basics of what we need, is the right to opt out. What we really need is permanent solutions of hardwired fiber optics, cable, or copper to the premises. That way, you will have a much faster signal. It's going to be far more reliable. Your data and your privacy are so much better secured when you're not buckshotting your data out through the air. And when we were up in New Hampshire testifying, and again, Courtney and Amelia, thank you for coming up to testify. The legislators there were so impressed with your testimony. But yet they allowed industry to run roughshod on them, and they did not pass the recommendation laws for what the New Hampshire report was saying. But New Hampshire said we need setbacks. We need to get wireless technology out of the schools. We need to label everything that's transmitting. So if you have infrastructure in your town, you need to have big signs at eye level that people know this is radiation and you shouldn't be anywhere near it. They want to get building inspectors trained, so if you want to go buy or lease a home, you can have measurements taken if you don't happen to own the equipment. And they want to get our federal delegates on this again, because all of the, like the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, the Centers for Disease Control and Protection, a lot of our agencies used to have highly trained, highly qualified experts working on this. And when the industry got that Telecom Act of 1996 passed, all those programs were pulled back and defunded. So we have nobody at the federal level looking out for us. So it's critical that we continue the work at the state and local level. And one of the other testifiers up in New Hampshire was the retired president of Microsoft Canada. And after he met with a dozen of the world's leading scientists, he came back and said, we are not safe and protected here in North America. The FCC guidelines are not protective. Canada's Safety Code 6 standard is not protective. And he said in his statement to the legislature, wireless is no longer advanced technology. It has outlived its useful life, and we need to be transitioning to sustainable, hardwired technology. And for those concerned with climate change, you should know that wireless infrastructure, systems, and devices consume 10 times more the energy than simply doing the right thing, which is running all of our technology through cables. So we are just, again, so proud of what you guys are doing, and we have about 5 minutes left today. Amelia, do you want to walk us through what your proclamation is proclaiming?
What are we proclaiming? You can go on the Environmental Health Trust website and you can look at our 2022 and our 2023 proclamations. The 2024 one is not much different. It essentially recognizes EHS as a disability that is impacting people all around the world, that it is progressive. It's a constellation of symptoms, neurological, physiological symptoms that people have. Often people manifest, there's a similar overlap, it seems, but also depending on your own constitution, your exposure, you may, I may have palpitations, you may have headaches or ringing in your ears. And the Massachusetts Association of Health Boards has that lovely statement, which is don't mistake the ubiquity for safety. It's not, right? We know that just because you can see cell towers everywhere when you're out driving, it doesn't mean that they're safe. The FCC is not a health and safety agency. So we have doctors and scientists and subject matter experts in EMF medical conferences and continuing education credits. And we have some of the best and brightest minds who are working on this issue. And since that Board of Health cease and desist was issued 2 years ago, science has only strengthened. I mean, every day it is overwhelming to read study after study after study. And so the proclamation not only acknowledges people and says, we have the right to have accessibility to our public spaces, to be accommodated, to be able to work, to be able to be a productive member of society, to be able to go to school without being exposed, and that we strive to have an inclusive society that makes room for all of us. And so I think we choose to do our global EHS Day forums so people know that they are not alone.
Right. If I can share with you, last night, this week, I went to my Board of Health to share what you guys are doing out in Pittsfield and to provide additional information and introduce them to the EMF Medical Conference. And the former chair of our health board was a physician, and he was there being recognized for his 7 years of service. And while I was chit-chatting with Dr. Etzkovitz beforehand, he said that he's had a neighbor staying with them because the EMFs in her home are so high, and they spent thousands of dollars trying to mitigate, and to no avail. She's now having to pack up and leave and move out of state. So this is happening all around us. We continue to do education at Massachusetts for safe technology. And as Courtney and Amelia mentioned, we are doing a program, a World EHS Day Symposium, on the 27th of June at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, and we invite everybody to go to our events page at Mass for Safe Tech. Register to join us, and you will hear 2-minute statements from many, many, many people who have fallen ill to this illness. And it's important for us all to learn to recognize these symptoms, because most of our doctors have not been trained. But we do have all the resources we need today to complete that training at no charge online. So we hope that everybody will join us through Massachusetts for Safe Technology. And we are so proud of you. We look forward to seeing the video clip of the proclamation with Mayor Marchetti on June 11th. And we also send our love and our prayers to you as your court date nears, hopefully in June. So Courtney and Amelia, thank you both so much for your courage and your stamina and your leadership, because none of us ever imagined this is where our time would go. But we look to you just like people look to Greta on climate change. Amelia, you are becoming a shining star for all of our children, and I can't thank you enough under the guidance of your wonderful mother. Thank you, everybody, and have a tech-safe day.
Thank you, Cece. Thank you.